to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
There's several, actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs that are out there of extraterrestrial origin.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. But the surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. I'm at the foot of the ladder. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Curious for a long time, and it's been ignored for way too long.
The biggest danger is not allowing the public to know. The biggest danger is secrecy, not transparency.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely. Would you have had the capability to defend yourself, your crew, your aircraft?
Absolutely not.
No. The technology that we faced was far superior than anything that we had.
We're going to start talking to people. We're going to start naming names.
Now it's on the front burner, and it's about time.
The dam has broke and it is overflowing.
What I personally witnessed was very disturbing.
Someone can reach through the veil of government and pierce it to the point of we do not have access to something. You've got to start asking yourself who the hell's in control. Do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured and concealed these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes. Personally.
Good evening, I'm Brian Enton. Welcome to our special report. A historic congressional hearing drew lines of spectators to the nation's capital, where under oath, 3 witnesses told lawmakers and the world, we are not alone and our government has proof. Remember, this all started with Pentagon whistleblower David Grush, who sat down with investigative journalist Ross Coulthart for an exclusive interview with News Nation. He alleged the U.S. government has a secret crash retrieval program and claims it is in possession of UFOs, even bodies of dead pilots. David Grush sat before a House Oversight Committee this week alongside former Navy pilot Ryan Graves and Black Aces Squadron Commander David Fravor, both who say they saw something not of this world. You are going to hear their testimony tonight, along with some new major developments that have come out since that hearing. What Russia knows about UFOs and reports Russian warplanes have actually engaged with UFOs. Then we will discuss it all with our panel of experts, including investigative journalist Ross Coulthart, who first broke the story right here on News Nation. Whether you believe it's UFOs or something else, it seems like there is something out there that top government leaders do not want us to know, something that is being hidden. So let's start with that allegation of a cover-up deep inside our own government and the stunning moment when David Grush reveals to Congress just how high the stakes are.
Thank you for being here, brother. Thank you all very much. Have you faced any retaliation or reprisals for any of your testimony or anything on these lines?
Yeah, I have to be careful what I say in detail because there is an open whistleblower reprisal investigation on my behalf, and I don't want to compromise that investigation by providing anything that may help provide somebody information. But it was very brutal and very unfortunate, some of the tactics they used to hurt me both professionally and personally, to be quite frank. Yeah.
It's very unfortunate. As they say, when you're over the target, that's when they do the most firing at you. Do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes. Personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you would think, that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
Maybe in a, if we could get in a confidential area, SCIF, we could talk about that. But unfortunately, we were denied access to the SCIF, and that's very unfortunate in this scenario.
You heard Representative Tim Burchett just reference a SCIF. You're going to hear that word a lot tonight. It refers to a sensitive, compartmentalized information facility, essentially an ultra-secure room for government contractors and officials to review some of the nation's most sensitive and classified documents and information. This is all to protect our national security, which was also a top concern from this week's witnesses, especially when it comes to technology associated with UFOs.
This is for any one of you. Based off of each of your experiences and observations, do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
I'll do it. Yes, and here's why. The technology that we faced was far superior than anything that we had, and you could put that anywhere. If you had one, you captured one, you reverse engineered it, you got it to work, you're talking something that can go into space, go someplace, drop down in a matter of seconds, do whatever it wants, and leave. And there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing.
Okay. You two?
Well, I would also like to add, from a commercial aviation and military aviation perspective, we deal with uncertainty in our operating space as a matter of our professional actions. Identifying friend from foe is very important to us. And so when we have unidentified targets and we continue to ignore those due to a stigma or a fear of what it could be, that's an opening that our adversaries can take advantage of.
What steps should be taken to better understand and respond to UAP encounters in the interest of national security?
There needs to be a location where this information is centralized for processing, and there needs to be a two-way communication loop so the operators on the front end have a feedback and can get best practices on how to process information, what to do, and to ensure that their reporting is being listened to. Right now, there is not a lot of back and forth.
Mr. Grush, in your complaint to the Intelligence Community Inspector General, you claim that you believe information is being hidden. What kind of information do you think was hidden, and do you think it should remain hidden?
Yes, I can speak to that very briefly in an unclassified manner. As you know, the preponderance of my complaint was classified to the intelligence communities. Both material acquisition and exploitation activity, also baselining the UAPs but not sharing it with, intelligence professionals that are actually doing step briefs to pilots, that kind of information.
So why do these pilots, Ryan Graves and David Fravor, say they believe what they saw in the skies were not of this earth? Here is exactly what they said under oath.
Mr. Graves, again, I'd like to know, how do you know that these were not our aircraft?
Some of the behaviors that we saw in a working area, we would see these objects being at 0.0 Mach, that's zero airspeed, over a certain pieces of the ground. So what that means, just like a river, if you throw a bobber in, it's going to float downstream. These objects were staying completely stationary in Category 4 hurricane winds. These same objects would then accelerate to supersonic speeds, 1.1, 1.2 Mach, and they would do so in very erratic and quick behaviors that I don't have an explanation for.
Okay. Have you spoken to commercial and military pilots that have seen these off of our East Coast?
I have.
Okay. Mr. Favor, I noticed that in the Tic Tac video, it's Tic Tac like the candy, not TikTok like the Chinese Communist app.
That's correct.
Yes, sir. I just want to make that because my daughter corrected me on that and called me a boomer and said, "Hey, boomer," and I said, "No, baby, it's Tic Tac like the candy. You're gonna have to just look it up." And but now I would also like to say today is a day of many firsts. It's a miracle that we're having this meeting, and it's also a miracle that my wife has put up with me for 9 years today. Today is my anniversary, so I want to tell my wife happy anniversary and that I love her very much. As she likes to say, this 9 years have been the best 2 years of her life. So, thank you. Mr. Favor, what astonished you the most about the flight capabilities of these Tic Tac, very briefly?
The performance. Absolute performance. It was.
And you're not aware of any other objects that anybody in the world has, in this world, that has those capabilities?
No, I think it's far beyond actually our material science that we currently possess.
Are you aware of any other reconnaissance platforms that have tracked or recorded the Tic Tac's maneuvers, maybe the NORAD system or any of the others?
I am not.
You heard Representative Tim Burchett really trying to get to the bottom of who knew what and when they knew it. He wants names and he wants titles, but as you're about to hear, a lot of that information David Grush says he cannot share publicly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to direct this, I believe, to Mr. Grush, but if any of you all feel like you need to jump in, just jump right in. We're good. Has the U.S. government become aware of actual evidence of extraterrestrial, otherwise unexplained forms of intelligence? And if so, when do you think this first occurred?
I like to use the term non-human. I don't like to denote origin. Keeps the aperture open, both scientifically. Right. Certainly, like I've discussed publicly previously, 1930s.
Okay. Can you give me the names and titles of the people with direct firsthand knowledge and access to some of this crash retrieval, some of these crash retrieval programs, and maybe which facilities, military bases that the recovered material would be in? And I know a lot of Congress talked about we're going to go to Area 51, and and there's nothing there anymore anyway. It's just and we move like a glacier. And as soon as we announce it, I'm sure the moving vans would pull up. But please.
I can't discuss that publicly, but I did provide that information both to the Intel committees and the Inspector General. And
we could get that in the SCIF if we were allowed to get in a SCIF with you. Would that be probably what you would think?
Sure, if you had the appropriate accesses, yeah.
What special access programs cover this information, and how is it possible that they have evaded oversight for so long?
I do know the names. Once again, I can't discuss that publicly and how they've evaded oversight. In a closed setting, I can tell you the specific tradecraft used.
All right. When do you think those programs began, and who authorized them?
I do know a lot of that information, but that's something I can't discuss publicly because sensitive.
All right. If any of y'all want to jump in on any of this, you're more than welcome to. What level of security clearance is required to fully access these programs?
Well, anybody who has...
and I say that because myself, Representative Gates and Representative Luna were basically turned away at one point at Eglin. So please go right ahead.
Certainly difference between member access and say somebody like me, but anybody who has a TSSCI clearance and meets the eligibility criteria, the access adjudicative authority should be able to grant you access.
Ms. Burchett, if you'll yield, so just to put a fine point on that, there's nothing that you're aware of that's above special access program classification.
It's a misnomer that there's anything actually above top secret. Executive Order 13526 delineates the classification levels.
Right, but I draw a point on that because we can have access to those programs, and so the notion that we're not being given that access sort of defies our typical muscle memory here in Congress. Thank you, Mr. Burchett. I'll yield back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Along those lines, Title 10, you may not know this or not, but Title 10 and Title 50 authorization, they seem to say they're inefficient. So who gets to decide this, in your opinion, in the past?
It's a group of career senior executive officials.
Okay, are they government officials?
Both in and out.
Do what?
Both in and out of government, and that's about as far as I can go there. Yeah.
All right, well, that leads to my next question. Which private corporations are directly involved in this program? How much taxpayer money has been invested in these programs, to your knowledge? I mean, we know we audit the Pentagon every year, and I've been here 5 years, and they failed the dadgum thing every year. They lose over $1 billion a year, we think, and I've told the Department of Defense maybe 60% of their assets are unaccounted for, whatever the heck that means. In the public sector, you go to jail for that kind of crap. So tell me.
Yeah, I know when I'm a dollar off of my DTS travel voucher, I get hammered, but it seems like it doesn't work the other way.
If you sell over $600 worth of stuff on eBay now, you get a call from the IRS. So please, what corporations?
Yeah, I don't know the specific metrics towards the end of your question. The specific corporations I did provide to the committees in specific divisions, and I spent 11.5 hours with both Intel committees. So.
Okay, has there been an active U.S. government disinformation campaign to deny the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena? And if so, why?
I can't go beyond what I've already espoused publicly about that.
What you said to get it into the record. Like, ask them what that is so you can get it into the congressional record.
Okay, I've been told to ask you what that is and how to get it in the record.
What have you stated publicly in your interviews for the congressional record?
Yeah.
If you reference my News Nation interview and I talk about a multi-decade, campaign to disenfranchise public interest,
Sorry,
basically.
Mr. Chairman, I've gone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I yield back negative 21 seconds.
Okay, this is really just the beginning. Buckle up because we have a lot more ahead from those hearings, including more about an incident at Eglin Air Force Base that got the attention of Florida Representative Matt Gaetz, and AOC's exchange with the witnesses over a possible money trail. Plus,
if you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
the shocking answer to that question and much, much more. It's all coming up in this live special right after the break.
Do we have bodies? Do we have species of
Well, naturally, when you recover something that's either landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots. And believe it or not, as fantastical as that sounds, it's true.
That was definitely one of the most shocking claims made by Pentagon whistleblower David Grush during his exclusive interview with investigative journalist Ross Coulthart right here on News Nation. You're going to hear from Ross later in the show. We'll have him on live, along with other experts as part of our roundtable on the historic hearings and what comes next and what's been learned since those hearings. But first, Congresswoman Nancy Mace presses for more information about what military pilots Ryan Graves and David Fravor say they encountered. And she pushes David Grush on his claim about dead pilots, where he shares even more detail.
So my first question, I have several questions, and if we could just be quick on these first two, I'm going to ask each of you the same question, and then I'll get to each of you individually. The first one, when you reported your experiences with a UAP, did any of you face any repercussions with your superiors, yes or no?
No.
No. I've actually never seen anything personally, believe it or not. So.
All right. And then do you believe there's an active disinformation campaign within our government to deny existence of UAPs, yes or no?
I don't have an answer to that.
As previously stated publicly, yes.
I think previously with like Project Blue Book, yes, but currently I don't speak for the United States government.
Okay. Thank you. I have a few questions for Mr. Graves. What percentage of UAP sightings, in your belief, go unreported by our pilots?
This is an approximation based off of my personal experience speaking with a number of pilots, but I would estimate we're somewhere near 5% reporting, perhaps.
So like 95% basically don't report seeing UAPs.
That's just my personal estimate.
In the incident off Virginia Beach, do you believe the Navy took the danger to your aircraft seriously after it was reported?
Absolutely.
A few questions for Mr. Favor. As an expert naval aviator, have you ever seen an object that looked and moved like the Tic Tac UAP?
No.
Did the Tic Tac UAP move in such a way that defied the laws of physics?
The way we understand them, yes.
Many dismiss UAP reports as classified weapons testing by our own government, but in your experience as a pilot, does our government typically test advanced weapon systems right next to multi-million-dollar jets without informing our pilots?
No, we have test ranges for that.
It took over 15 years for your encounter with the Tic Tac to be declassified. Do you feel there was a good reason to prevent lawmakers from having access to this footage?
No, I just think it was ignored when it happened, and it just sat somewhere in a file. Never got reported.
In a drawer. It happens a lot up here. Shocker. Mr. Grush, a couple of questions for you too, sir, this morning. What percentage of UAPs do you feel are adequately investigated by the U.S. government, of the 5% that are reported?
I can only speak for my personal leadership over at NGA. I tried to look at every report that came through that I could triage. So.
Do you believe that officials at the highest levels of our national security apparatus have unlawfully withheld information from Congress and subverted our oversight authority?
There are certain elected leaders that had more information that I'm not sure what they've shared with certain Gang of Eight members or et cetera, but certainly I'm not surprised.
Okay. You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So, and you may or may not be able to answer my last question, and maybe we get into a skiff at the next hearing that we have, but who in the government, either what agency, sub-agency, what contractors, who should be called into the next hearing about UAPs, either in a public setting or even in a private setting? And you probably can't name names, but what agencies or organizations, contractors, et cetera, do we need to call in to get these questions answered, whether it's about funding, what programs are happening, and what's out there?
I can give you a specific cooperative and hostile witness list of specific individuals that were in those.
And how soon can we get that list?
I'm happy to provide that to you after the hearing.
Super. Thank you. And I yield back.
Okay, so still ahead tonight, we are sharing a new letter just entered into the congressional record from George Knapp about what Russia knows about UFOs. Democrat AOC and Republican Tim Burchett become allies, plus this.
The image was of something that I am not able to attach to any human capability, either from the United States or from any of our adversaries.
An incident so serious at an Air Force base in Florida that Representative Matt Gaetz had to get involved. We're back right after this. Welcome back to this special edition of News Nation after a historic week in Washington with bombshell testimony on UFOs and allegations of decades-old secrets kept deep inside our own government. We have brand new details and documents tonight entered into the congressional record and new bipartisan alliances coming together in the wake of all of these allegations. More on that coming up ahead live with our panel. But let's go back to a significant moment during Wednesday's hearings when Florida Republican Representative Matt Gaetz made a guest appearance, and he shared for the first time ever a chilling encounter and the roadblocks he says he faced while trying to get answers.
Several months ago, my office received a protected disclosure from Eglin Air Force Base indicating that there was a UAP incident that required my attention. I sought a briefing regarding that episode and brought with me Congressman Burchett and Congresswoman Luna. We asked to see any of the evidence that had been taken by flight crew in this endeavor and to observe any radar signature as well as to meet with the flight crew. We were not afforded access to all of the flight crew. And initially, we were not afforded access to images and to radar. Thereafter, we had a bit of a discussion about how authorities flow in the United States of America, and we did see the image. And we did meet with one member of the flight crew who took the image. The image was of something that I am not able to attach to any human capability, either from the United States or from any of our adversaries. And I'm somewhat informed on the matter, having served on the Armed Services Committee for 7 years, having served on the committee that oversees DARPA and advanced technologies for several years. When we spoke with the flight crew, and when he showed us the photo that he'd taken, I asked why the video wasn't engaged, why we didn't have a FLIR system that worked. Here's what he said. They were out on a test mission that day over the Gulf of Mexico. And when you're on a test mission, you're supposed to have clear airspace. Not supposed to be anything that shows up. And they saw a sequence of 4 craft in a clear diamond formation for which there is a radar sequence that I alone have observed in the United States Congress. One of the pilots goes to check out that diamond formation and sees a large floating, what I can only describe as an orb. Again, like I said, not of any human capability that I'm aware of. And when he approached, he said that his radar went down, he said that his FLIR system malfunctioned, and that he had to manually take this image from one of the lenses, and it was not automated in collection as you would typically see in a test mission. So I guess I'll start with Commander Fravor. How should we think about the fact that this craft that was approached by our pilot had the capability of disarming a number of the sensor and collection systems on that craft?
Well, I think this goes to that national security side, and you can go back through history of things showing up at certain areas and disabling our capabilities, which is disheartening. And for us, I mean, like I said, it completely disabled the radar on the aircraft when it tried to do it, and the only way we could see it is passively, which is how he got that image. So I think that's a concern on what are these doing, not only how do they operate, but their capabilities inside to do things like this.
And how should we think about 4 craft moving in a very clear formation, equidistant from one another, in a diamond, in all of the phenomenon, perhaps, Mr. Grave, that you've analyzed, have we ever seen multiple craft in a single formation?
I have one particular case, and that was during the gimbal incident. The recording on the AT FLIR system shows a single object that rotates. You hear the pilots refer to a fleet of objects that is not visible on the FLIR system, and that was something that I witnessed during the debrief as part of the radar data on the situational awareness page. I would like to add, however, Congressman, there's a small bit of anger, I would say. I would feel that those pilots are still facing that difficulty in reporting this topic, and they don't have the tools to be able to mitigate this issue. It just goes to show how serious this is and why this is such an important issue for our pilots and for our nation.
It was stated explicitly to me by these test pilots that if you have a UAP experience, the best thing you can do for your career is forget it and not tell anyone. Because any type of reporting, either above the surface or below the surface, does have a perceived consequence to these people, and that is a culture we must change if we want to get to the truth.
So what kind of threat could these UFOs pose to Americans and also our government? Even without all the information and the answers, we got some more that we weren't expecting under oath, and it was very, very startling.
I serve on the National Security Subcommittee for the Financial Services Committee, so I really want to stay in the national security lane, if I may. So when we think about traditional adversaries and both us towards them and them towards us, we probe their capabilities. We look for weaknesses, and we collect that data, that reconnaissance for in the event we need it in the future. For each of you, yes or no question. Based off of your own experience or the data that you've been privy to, is there any indication that these UAPs could be essentially collecting reconnaissance information? Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Grush?
Fair assessment, yeah.
Mr. Fravor?
Very possible.
Again, in the national security vein, is it possible that these UAPs would be probing our capabilities? Yes or no, Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Grush?
Yes.
Fravor?
Definitely.
Is it possible that these UAPs are testing for vulnerabilities in our current systems?
Yes.
Yes. Possible.
Do you feel, based off of your experience and the information that you've been privy to, that these UAPs provide an existential threat to the national security of the United States? Mr. Graves?
Potentially.
Yes, sir, potentially.
Same answer, potentially.
Yeah, I'd say definitely, potentially.
Mr. Graves and Fravor, in the event that your encounters had become hostile, would you have had the capability to defend yourself, your crew, your aircraft?
Absolutely not.
Sir?
No.
Is based off of the information that you've been privy to, is there any indication that these UAPs are interested in our nuclear technology and capabilities?
Yes.
By external observation, sure, that could be a fair assessment, yeah.
Yes.
Is there any indication that the Department of Energy is involved in UAP data collection and housing?
I don't have an answer.
I can't confirm or deny that in a public setting.
And could you do it in a secure setting?
Yes.
Mr. Fravor?
No, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm the last member to go, but there clearly is a threat to the national security of the United States of America. As members of Congress, we have a responsibility to maintain oversight and be aware of these activities so that, if appropriate, we take action. I would encourage the chairman to demand that we have any and all, but in particular Mr. Grush, talk to us in a skiff. And if that access is denied, I will personally volunteer to initiate the Holman Rule against any personnel or any program or any agency that denies access to Congress.
You heard Congressman Andy Ogles referencing using the Holman Rule in that exchange. That is a House rule that allows amendments that could reduce the salaries of specific federal employees, fire them, or cut a specific program. Okay, members of Congress are hyper-focused on tracking down people that could be connected to allegations of a government cover-up, including AOC. They're into the programs, but they're also asking questions about the money. We'll talk about that coming up. Pentagon whistleblower David Grush's bombshell claims in an exclusive News Nation interview has set off unprecedented movement in Washington and new calls for transparency from notable lawmakers, including Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who tries to connect the dots between alleged UAP secret programs, government contractors, and government agencies.
Mr. Grush, you sat on the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon Task Force created in the 2020 NDAA, correct?
Yes.
There have been some things that have been mentioned here during this hearing that I wanted to pick up on. Mr. Graves, you mentioned specifically during the answers to one of your questions, you named Boeing contractors being engaged in an incident regarding this red cube about a football field wide. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the interaction, or Mr. Grush, either of you, the interactions between defense contractor companies and any UAP-related programs or activities.
So I'll just say that the information about the contractor themselves were provided by a witness, and I have no particular detail in that relationship.
Mr. Grush.
The kind of general unclassed wave tops, certainly the contractors, or the metal benders, so to speak, the ones actually doing specific performance on government contracts.
Are they required to issue any disclosure regarding UAP sightings, or do they engage in any reporting around this?
In terms of the contractors?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of.
They do not. Okay. Now, when it comes to notification that you had mentioned about IRAD programs, we have seen defense contractors abuse their contracts before through this committee. I have seen it personally, and I have also seen the notification requirements to Congress abused. I am wondering, one of the loopholes that we see in the law is that there is, at least from my vantage point, is that depending on what we're seeing, is that there are no actual definitions or requirements for notification. What methods of notification did you observe? Like when they say they notified Congress, how did they do that? Do you have insight into that?
For certain IRAD activities, I can only think of ones conventional in nature. Sometimes they flow through certain, I'll just say, SAP programs that have cognizant authority over the Air Force or something, and those are congressionally reported compartments, but IRAD is literally internal to the contractor, so as long as it's money, either profits, private investment, et cetera, they can do whatever they want.
To put a finer point on it, when there is a requirement for any agency or company to notify Congress, do they contact the chairman of a committee? Do they get them on the phone specifically? Is this through an email to hypothetically a dead email box?
A lot of it comes through what they call the PPR, Periodic Program Review process, if it's a SAP or Controlled Access Program Equity, and then those go to the specific committees, whether it be the SAS, TASC, HISI.
Thank you. I apologize. My time is limited. Mr. Graves, one of your main concerns is that the FAA currently does not have an official process to receive reports of UAP from pilots or others, correct?
Correct.
And in your experience, what data should the Aero program prioritize for potential collection? We have, location, date, time, but are there other specific characteristics that should be included in these reports?
Certainly. I think that there's two categories that would be important. One would be kinematics and understanding the specifics of how the vehicle or objects are moving. And the second would be a more zoomed out approach of being able to look at origin and destination before the incident, as well as getting a better contextual understanding of how these objects are interacting with each other.
Thank you. Now, because I only have a minute left, I apologize, we only have 5 minutes today, but for the record, if you were me, where would you look? Titles, programs, departments, regions, if you could just name anything. And I put that as an open question to the three of you.
I'd be happy to give you that in a closed environment. I can tell you specifically.
Thank you. Commander Fravor?
I would say, and I've told people that you have to know where to look. They're not going to divulge it to you because of the classification levels. But if you know where to look and who to talk to, which is exactly where Mr. Grush can point you, then you have them.
Okay. Mr. Graves?
I was an operator, so I was depending on folks like Mr. Grosh to do that homework.
Okay. Thank you very much. I yield back to the chair.
And so now it seems the floodgates have opened, and the response from leading lawmakers on UFOs is about as direct as it could be.
We're going to start talking to people. We're going to start naming names.
What has happened since these witnesses testified and the new information that has since come out? We've got it when we come back. Representatives Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna have essentially been leading the charge to uncover whatever secrets they believe the government may be hiding about UFOs. And immediately following this week's hearing, they shared even more plans.
We were denied access to the SCIF, and so to my knowledge, what's going to happen now is not only do we have the support of the chairman, but they're going to get a nice letter from Congress. And as you heard, Representative Ogle said, if we're denied, we're going to use the Holman Rule. We'll defund the position.
And then what about this talk for a full repository of all the data on it? Is that something you're going to support with legislation coming out?
Yes.
Talk to us more about that.
It's very multifaceted. We've got so many ideas now. Like I said, this is just the first of many, and the reason we got this is because we told them we would just do the field hearings, and we were going to do them in my front yard. My wife and daughter were going to grill out hamburgers and hot dogs, and y'all would all be invited, and we could ask everything, and we could bring everybody there. So they didn't want that, so they brought us back here. So, it's still an uphill battle, though. I mean, every step of the way has been.
Has this made you realize that we are not alone?
I knew it before. I didn't need this, but I'd seen enough. I've seen enough, and I would hope that you all would get that opportunity to see what
and
we've
I'm sure
seen.
you guys have heard enough, too. I mean, you heard the testimony of some of the technology. Representative Ogles asked some great questions, but when you have a senior military pilots and officials saying that there's technology that they don't believe is from us, from humans.
And also, you got to realize 3 United States congressmen were denied by our military. We're supposed to be telling them what to do, not the other way around. And so we're going to continue on that path.
Well, I just think it should be noted, I posed the question, does UAP technology potentially pose an existential threat to the national security of the United States of America? And all 3 of the witnesses answered yes. Congress has a responsibility now to move forward aggressively to get to the answers to these questions, even if it's in a secure environment.
Towards the end of the hearing, you all spoke about reverse engineering. I just want to hear, what do you think about the situation, as well as what are legislative approaches that you can take to ensure transparency?
Well, reverse engineering, of course, we're talking about something that we have no concept of. So it's like, I'm a motorcycle guy, so if I took a Harley Davidson or one of the new Indians and took it back to the people on the Mayflower, yeah, they could shine it. They wouldn't be able to fix the carburetor. They wouldn't be able to change the plugs. They might be able to figure out where the gas goes. They might get it started. But that's sort of where we're at with the reverse engineering. It's just so much ahead of us. But the question you have to ask, and it was alluded to in there, was that it's been handed off to people within the business community so that there is no FOIA, that you all in the press have no access. So, where does the line end and where does it begin between the government and big business? And I think it'd be wise for you all to start looking at some financial disclosures of some of those corporations, some of the people who do the stonewalling in this town.
You talked about the intel communities blocking access. We're going to continue to see that. And my second question is about the corporations. You mentioned corporate interests. I'm wondering if you all are planning on naming names in that sense.
Well, that's why we want to get in the SCIF and get some of those names if these folks can stay healthy long enough. But again, I had a piece of legislation, very simple. It just said that when a commercial airline pilot reports a sighting or something unusual, an anomaly in the air, that when he reports that to FAA, they report it to Congress. And I was told by leadership that it was blocked by the intelligence community, not the intelligence committee, but the intelligence community. And that is a very chilling effect. If someone can reach through the veil of government and pierce it to the point of we do not have access to something, you got to start asking yourself who the hell's in control.
But you guys also should, too, be asking these questions of the intelligence community, because we can only do so much as members. That's where you guys really pick up the slack, right? So keep the pressure on.
What are your thoughts on the pilots? Only 5% of them are reporting right now.
Well, because...
And if you do report, then you're going to get in trouble.
Well, Matt Gaetz alluded to that, and we were there, and that's when the CIA folks got a little nervous when we were talking, and when we were told that apparently that they do destroy the evidence because they don't want to come back and be pulled off the flight line. Now they say they're debriefed, but it's 8 hours. They're interrogated. They're pulled off the flight line. These guys don't make a lot of money. They fly in a $50 million piece of machinery, yet they're treated like dogs. And then on the backside, they get a blemish on their record. So, it's this military intelligence. Like I said, military intelligence is like congressional ethics. It doesn't exist.
Are you concerned they're using reverse engineering?
That is something that my office can answer. We'll get you the information, but we did request a SCIF briefing room for us, as well as Moskowitz, Representative Gates, as well as Representative Burchett and Burleson. Yes. That we will get you that information as well. Please reach out to my office.
Did you ask Speaker McCarthy's office?
I will be. I'll be talking to Speaker McCarthy. Actually, he's the one that gave the green light to this meeting. He's the one, because Luna and I went to him. Man, you asked me about reverse engineering.
Do you think that there's something nefarious going on with reverse engineering? Do you have any reason to believe that?
I don't know about nefarious, but this is aircraft Americans. This country has apparently, according to witnesses, that they've retrieved, yet we don't have access to it, that someone else is profiting from it. I think you could get into if you have espionage from other countries and things like that, I'd rather we have that than China.
Well, that gets to a national security issue too. Is if there's technology that's being reverse engineered and it's being done by a third party, who ultimately owns and has control of that technology? So again, those are questions that Congress should be asking and that we get answers to.
To that point, David Grush did say in there that he gave information to the inspectors general about where these things are allegedly located. Do you have access to that?
It's a letter that's going to be penned that the members who are here today will likely sign on, as well as any other member, Democrat or Republican, to get that information and then disclose it to the American people.
Potentially visit those sites?
100%.
We'll see what they have, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
What's next?
We're going to formulate some more ideas. We'll get some legislation out of this. But what I'd hoped, honestly, was I'm shocked, actually, at just the amount of information that came out, because all the roadblocks that we were put up against us. So I think what's going to happen now, the floodgates, other people are going to say, I've got some information, I'd like to come swear in. And that's what we're going to start doing. We're going to start talking to people. We're going to start naming names. I want you to think about this. Think about this, that something with the capabilities of traveling light years, not showing a heat signature, and the energy capabilities of that would put the Pentagon out of business. We wouldn't be fighting these worthless wars overseas over oil, and American boys and girls wouldn't be dying. It would put the war pigs out of business, and they'd have to go somewhere else, and I'm all for that. I'm all for that.
All right, guys.
Is that good?
You see him there standing by along with our panel of leading experts. We've got Representative Burchett. We'll also have journalist Ross Coulthart joining us, among others, as we share brand new documents entered into the congressional record on Russian encounters with UFOs that are downright chilling. There's so much more to come. New interviews coming up ahead. Welcome back to our special coverage of the UFO congressional hearings. We went through all the major moments from this week's hearings. It's a lot to process. So much has even happened since then, though, including new allegations that Russia also has a secret UFO program and has even shot at UFOs. I want to welcome Congressman Tim Burchett, who is really at the forefront of making the UFO hearings happen. You saw him over the last hour. Thank you so much for being with us, Congressman. I want to start with this new letter that was entered into the congressional record from George Knapp, the investigative journalist, with these really unbelievable claims with Russia and their UFO program. He has information from a program head in Russia named Colonel Boris Sokolov. It says Sokolov said there had been 45 incidents in which Russian warplanes engaged with UFOs, chased them, even shot at them. In most recent incidents, the UFOs shot away at unbelievable speeds, but in 3 incidents, the Russian warplanes were dibbled and crashed. 2 of the pilots were killed. And after those incidents, they go on to say that there was this nationwide order that UFOs should be left alone because, in the words of the top air defense official, they have incredible capacities for retaliation. That's a new letter that's been entered since the hearings, Congressman. I hadn't heard that before. Pretty unbelievable. Did you know about this Russian connection?
Well, as you know, George Knapp is probably the foremost expert in your field on this issue. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't know about Area 51, just the rumors that were about it. He actually broke that story and many others, and he's still an active journalist. And anything George comes up with, I'm not surprised about. But George is also a friend of mine. I guess I should say that for the record. But yeah, there's always been talk about Russia. Of course, the secrecy around it and things that have happened over there. But sure, it's a lot of they cover a lot of ground over there. So obviously, they'd had some instances, and this one in particular is of great interest.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that they had this program, very, very intense program, sophisticated, where they were studying UFOs for years. He said there was other evidence about the secret Russian program that he received from former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. They were very, very close for years and giving each other information. He says UFOs appeared over a Russian missile base. This was also interesting. Again, now in the congressional record, UFOs appeared over the base, performed astonishing maneuvers in front of stunned eyewitnesses, and then somehow took control of the launch system. The missiles aimed at the U.S. were suddenly fired up. Launch control codes were somehow entered, and the base was unable to stop what could have been initiated World War III. Then just as suddenly the UFOs disappeared and the launch control system shut down. I mean, if you're not concerned about national security with this issue, I mean, that pretty much sums it up right there. You know, if that's all true, and again, you talk about George Knapp's credibility, it's really alarming.
Well, and oddly enough, an event like that happened in the United States of America. You can research it. I can't recall the name of it right now, but it's been pretty well documented that the UFOs were sighted over a nuclear installation, and it was completely shut down, and they couldn't figure out what was going on with it. And to this day, they're not sure, other than the fact that there were UFOs flying around it. And that was actually alluded to in the Intelligence Committee's only open meeting that they had concerning this issue. It was asked by one of the congressional members about that specific incident. Of course, the gentlemen who were heading up that program for the Pentagon couldn't spell UFOs, much less UAP. They had no clue of what he was talking about. And I'm sure they went back and asked their grandkids, and their grandkids probably said, "Google it, Granddad."
Yeah, we just spent the last hour going over all of the highlights of the hearing from Wednesday. But when you talk about the nuclear site, there's so much that didn't come out. It seems like this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Very much so. You know, we're going to start. I would hope that Speaker McCarthy, and I would hope that the American public would contact their legislators and say, hey, or congressional legislators and their senators, say this is something of a serious nature. We want to know what the heck's going on, and why are y'all covering it up? And why do we keep funding a Pentagon that loses over $1 billion a year, that has never passed an audit, yet they're coming to us now whispering in some members here, hey, we need to study this. We need to get ahead of this. Send us more money, when in fact they've been asleep at the switch, and not, well, they haven't been asleep at the switch. They know exactly what's going on. And
so they're already asking for more money? They're already asking for more money after the hearings?
Why, sure. They've already started. Well, look at Chuck Schumer's bill. That's going to cost money. I don't know how much, but that's going to cost money. I've said all along, NASA, Pentagon, all of our Department of Defense, turn loose your files. Quit sending us these redacted files that look like a piece of Swiss cheese, like somebody shot it with a 12-gauge shotgun. You can't make out heads or tails, maybe the date, and that's about it on it. And they don't, it just continued to be covered up. The legislation I had that just said, if you're a commercial airline pilot and you are going to send a report to the FAA about an anomalous sighting or a UFO or what have you, that report would be sent to Congress. Yet it was blocked by the intelligence community. These people that do not have an elected, they're not elected, they're appointed. They're sitting behind some desk over there at the Pentagon or somewhere, and they're making the decisions, and they're laughing at us. They're laughing at us because they know we don't. Listen, I'm the only one I've heard in Congress. There's a couple of us, Jim Jordan, myself, and some others, that have said, Luna and Gates, we've all said that we need to get to the bottom of what's going on with the Pentagon. But at some point we got to cut off their money.
Yeah, I thought this was interesting, Congressman. One of the things that seems to have struck a nerve with people on both sides of the aisle, we don't see agreement a lot, but it is with this, is the possibility of this secret government program and the money. Where are the funds coming from? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, someone that you don't normally agree with, she spoke out on Wednesday. Also, she then went on social media very concerned about who's funding these programs. I want to play what she said on social media, and then we'll talk about it.
Do I think something is going on? Yes. There were specific defense contractors named. There were programs that were being abused that were named. And do I think there are grounds to pull on that thread further? Yes, I do. And I think that it should be pulled further. Do I know what it is? No. Am I going to be a hater? No. But I'm always interested in corruption and cover-ups. Like, that's my thing.
I saw your tweet this morning, Congressman, where you retweeted that and you said your friend was onto something, that there's something shady going on. You got a lot of heat from some of your constituents calling her your friend, but it is interesting that you guys have agreement on this issue.
Yeah, we've been buddies. We both came to Congress at the same time. I call her Cortez. She calls me Burchett. We're fine. I don't care. I'm not going to go to New York City and get her beat. She's sure as heck going to come to East Tennessee and get me beat. And so we're friends, and it's a good relationship, you know. And I was encouraged by her line of questioning. If you saw my second or third line of questionings, I just went down that list and I got down to the point of where that exactly is what's going on. They are hiding money or what have you. It's unchecked money. They're overcharging people for stuff, and they're using that money for something else. And what the hell they're using it for? Well, I'll tell you, it's covering up the biggest issue that will face us in our lifetime. And that is there life out there, and do we know about it?
Yeah, it's the question that has all of us fascinated. You mentioned during the hearings that you wanted to get David Grush into a SCIF to get more information. Are there plans to make that happen?
Yeah, but as you saw, my friend Representative Luna from Florida had, you know, that was her deal. She was in charge of that, and she was denied it, and through no fault of her own. And I'm trying to get an appointment with the speaker to say, you know, what the heck's going on? We've got to get to the bottom of this. You know, you brush this under the carpet, it's going to stink, and people are going to come unglued, and they should, frankly. You know, we'll get to the bottom of it eventually. I just hope it's in my lifetime.
What do you make of the government contractors? News Nation, we reached out to every government contractor we could think of. Lockheed Martin, in terms of what they know about UAPs,
Sure.
Are they being funded? Lockheed Martin did write us back, very simple statement. It just said questions about UAPs are best addressed by the U.S. government. What did you make of that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, see, you can't do a FOIA request, and for the folks watching, that's a freedom of information. You can't ask for that from a private business, nor can I as a congressman. So what they do is it's kind of hand in glove. It's been handed off to these businesses since the 40s, I guess. And that sort of shields it from us, and they get these sweetheart contracts doing who knows what. And they're the ones researching it. It's so compartmentalized that the people working on it probably don't even know what they're working on. They're working on analyzing a piece of metal or some other biological entity, and they don't know what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And so it keeps it very compartmentalized, and that's what's going on. I would encourage you all to start in the media, it's public record, and the public to start looking at these financial disclosures of these elected officials, the ones that are at top positions, and just see what gravy train they're on, and you might see why they don't push the envelope on any of these important questions.
Well, it's interesting. It's not hard to figure out the ones that don't want to talk about it, or don't write us back, or don't want to do the interviews, or nowhere near the hearing room when these things go on. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. One quick thing I wondered about, Congressman, I interviewed you about a week before the hearings, and you said you thought there was going to be about half a dozen witnesses, so 6 witnesses. We ended up seeing the 3 witnesses. Was there a plan to have more?
Absolutely. And we had one tell us that he'd received a call from, I guess, maybe the Pentagon, and he or she decided that maybe it wasn't best that they were on there. We had somebody who was an affiliation with NASA, and NASA will say, well, they didn't work for NASA. This is news to us, but it was one of their quasi something, I don't know. But anyway, and they turned us, or they backed out at the end. And then we had one more, I think, that backed out. And, we just had so many roadblocks from even the press conference. We were going to do a press conference to talk about this, myself and 3 others. And a reporter, actually, one of your colleagues, put his microphone down. And I was leaving the Republican conference and said, hey, y'all having this press conference, right? And I said, yeah, it's tomorrow, I think, or whenever. And he said, well, they put you in a room that's under construction, and it is tiny. I said, he said, this is a big deal. You need to be in the main room. And I was like, what the heck's going on? So I got to check it, and sure enough, and staff members told us that David Grush wasn't reliable, and, it's not their position to do that. See, that is the swamp. You got somebody whispering in their ear, some contractor or some friend or somebody, in Congress is compromised because they went on a trip overseas and they let their guard down and ended up getting filmed doing something they shouldn't have been doing. And that's exactly what the Russians would do with these honeypots, and our own people would do it just as well. They're just as dirty. And so This whole thing just stinks from top to bottom, Brian. Every step of the way, they have fought us.
Well, I just want to ask you, I'm just curious, I just want to nail down what you said because I'm very interested. I mean, one of the witnesses that backed out at the last second, you said the Pentagon made a call. I mean, was that someone who was also a whistleblower, someone who had like firsthand knowledge of something?
Yeah, we thought they did. You know, we get these names, and I get names because I've been following this issue for years. I mean, maybe 40 years. I was a kid, 50 years, I guess. And so these names keep popping up, and you read about them, you research them. They're decorated veterans. And they want to talk, and they might want to talk. And then you get a hold of them, and they say, in fact, yes, I do want to come talk. And then lo and behold, they start backing out. You know, and I'm told by reliable people I need to be careful, and you know, and I don't know what I'm doing, and you know, other Congress members telling me that, you know, they actually have had several congressmen, pretty reputable congressmen, tell me they've had sightings, and they've described some pretty interesting things that have happened to them. And you know, but they wanted. I said, you want to come talk about it? And they said, no, I want to be anonymous, but I want you to know that I'm not against you on this thing because I have seen something that was not, I could not describe.
I think there's still an embarrassment factor, but it seems like that's changing.
Yeah,
Congressman
that's
Burkett,
changing.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say thank you so much for coming on tonight. Thank you for being so open with us throughout this entire process. And we look forward to talking more and continuing to cover the topic. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Brian. You can always call me Tim. And if it wasn't for y'all at News Nation, this thing probably wouldn't have broke because of your persistent nature on this issue. And it is very important. Over half America thinks we're not alone. And I just can't imagine in God's great, incredible universe that we're the best that he could do.
Yeah, well, we'll stay on it. It'll be interesting to see what else comes out. Thank you so much for coming on, Congressman. I want to bring in our panel now to discuss all these new developments. Nick Pope worked for the British government investigating UFOs, and Ben Hansen is a former FBI agent, also investigates UFO sightings. Thank you both for being with us. It's great to see you in person for once. I always see you guys on Zoom. This is awesome. First of all, I want to ask you, Ben, very interesting. That's the first time I'd heard him say that. I was wondering, because he told me a week before the hearings they were expecting 6, and then it went down to 3. And I was wondering, did someone get intimidated? And it sounds like that's what happened.
I mean, that's great to hear, the kind of behind the scenes. We always hear the rumors of who the witnesses might be because we know others were interviewed. I mean, both Nick and I know because they've been, you know, kind of active on social media. We were expecting to hear from the Malmstrom case and witnesses there that witnessed the 1967 missile shutdown, right? And that dovetails exactly with what George Knapp just came out with. So I do believe, though, there is plenty of room for the next hearings that we're going to hear from some of these other witnesses.
What do you make of, Nick, this new information that came out of George Knapp's letter involving Russia? I mean, that really takes it to the next level, that they've had 40-some encounters, that they actually had a UFO shut down and a missile base at one point. Really alarming stuff.
Yeah, it's a timely reminder that this is a global phenomenon, and certainly Russia had and still has a program looking at this. China has a program looking at it. The UK, of course, where I worked. I mean, I'm intrigued. There are missiles being shut down. There are missiles being put into their pre-launch sequence. Most disturbing, well, almost as disturbing, these shoot downs or these attempted shoot downs. I've heard 3 previous stories, but not from Russia. One actually from the UK of aircraft ordered to shoot down. The UFO moved off. One from Iran, where the actual aircraft systems were disabled, and one from Peru, where he did shoot at the thing, and he said the rounds were hit it, but got absorbed. So fascinated to hear that there are Russian cases too.
It's interesting. The head of AARO, which is the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the people who are supposed to be investigating UFOs, they apparently didn't like the way they came across during this hearing. And Dr. Kirkpatrick, who is the head of AARO, put out a personal statement. It wasn't a statement officially through the government. It was actually on his LinkedIn, which was kind of interesting. Put this personal letter. I want to read you a part of it because he seemed very, very upset about the hearing. He said, "I am deeply disappointed at the denigration of AARO's dedicated men and women hailing from the Department of Defense, intelligence community, and civil partners who are pouring their hearts out working this issue on behalf of Congress. Finally, to be clear, AARO has yet to find any credible evidence to support the allegations of any reverse engineering program for non-human technology." I mean, it seems like he was personally offended by what the witnesses said. What do you make of it?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been following this for a couple of days now, and I'm trying to play devil's advocate because I do think at heart Kirkpatrick is doing the best he knows how, right? But you have to remember he came out a couple months ago with co-authoring a paper with Avi Loeb, the Harvard professor, right? Mainstream media took that, a lot of them, and said the headline was, Harvard professor and director of AARO claim that there's a mothership possibly orbiting Earth. That was not at all what the premise of the paper was. And so that was his initiation into this. And so now he feels like this is basically an ex parte hearing, so the other party's not present, and they say some things. He felt offended. I don't know what is in his mind, but I think he spoke out of defense. And so now they're walking it back.
Just don't know that it was a good look coming right out of those hearings. You know?
It's not.
It was a joke. We got to go to a quick break. We've got a lot more to discuss over the next half an hour or so. More whistleblowers, could they be coming forward, especially pilots? We're keeping an eye on that. Coming up next, Ryan Graves, the fighter pilot who testified at this week's hearings. He's standing by. He's going to join us live coming up next.
I recognize the skepticism surrounding this topic. If everyone could see the sensor and video data I witnessed, our national conversation would change. I urge us to put aside stigma and address the security and safety issue this topic represents. If UAP are foreign drones, it is an urgent national security problem. If it is something else, it is an issue for science.
It takes a lot of bravery to come forward, especially as a member of the military, and speak publicly about seeing a UFO. Our next guest, Ryan Graves, testified at Wednesday's hearings. You saw him there about what he saw while piloting an F-18, and he's been instrumental in encouraging other pilots to speak out. Ryan joins me live now. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Ryan. I'm curious, it's been a few days since the hearings. Pilots feel comfortable coming to you and your organization. Have you seen an increase in people coming forward with stories? Have you heard anything especially interesting in the last couple of days?
Absolutely, you're correct. So yeah, since the hearing, there have been an influx of people coming to safeaerospace.org and joining both as pilots, as people just want to support this conversation. And a lot of those pilots have shared their stories. There have been a number of commercial pilots that have recently signed up that have been confirming some of the sightings that I spoke about, as well as sharing some new data about potentially some new cases. So we certainly have a work cut out for us.
An interesting development since the hearings, Ryan, is the AARO head, Dr. Kirkpatrick, coming forward with this statement that I just read a couple of minutes ago, really not happy about the hearings, calling out David Grush. Did that surprise you? What did you make of that? Like, here's the statement again, saying that he was deeply disappointed. Were you surprised to see him come out with that statement on his LinkedIn?
Well, disappointed to see him come out that way. I would be disappointed to hear if he thought that hearing in any way was a slight on any of the men or women that were serving under AARO or that he's worked with. I don't think anyone would speak poorly to any of that staff. I think there is perhaps justification for calling out improvement to the Office of AARO or their processes that they've demonstrated thus far. So I hope that message got through clearly.
I'm just curious. You've been outspoken. You've done a lot of interviews over the years. What did it feel like, testifying there in Congress? Did it feel, I mean, you've told the story many times, but did it feel different being under oath and on the record? I mean, it was obviously just such a historic moment.
It's very difficult to describe it. It was quite the experience, even just from the moment we, opened the back doors and came out. I honestly kind of lost my breath for a moment. But, sitting there, it was something that I had spoken to before. And for me, it was a story that I had considered for a while, and it was nothing but the truth. So for me to be under oath in a way was almost empowering, that I could show people that I was being as honest as I felt.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt Gaetz, you heard him talk about a UAP incident at Eglin Air Force Base, that he saw a radar image, now wants that image to be released, is asking for a subpoena to force them to release that image. Does that sound at all like what you saw? What do you make of Representative Gaetz' story about what happened at the base there?
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. It actually did remind me very much of the fleet of objects that was seen in the vicinity of the gimbal incident. That was something that wasn't seen on the FLIR footage, but was seen on the radar data on the situational awareness page, and you can hear the pilot speak to it. Well, when Representative Gates spoke to that particular incident in Florida, it reminded me of the same incident. What was even more interesting is just how positive the congressman was that what he had seen an image was not ours.
One thing I wondered too, I heard David Grush say over and over again, there was confidential information that he could only talk about with them in a SCIF, in a confidential environment. Is there stuff that you know and saw that you're not able to talk about, or because it was sort of a firsthand account when you were piloting the F-18, it's all just open to the public?
When I first testified to my case and I spoke about it behind closed door, there was classified information relating to our weapons and sensor ranges that would be considered classified now. However, there would be no information related to UAP or related to the security classification guidelines, or defined through the security classification guidelines specifically for UAP themselves. So I was never read into any classified UAP program or anything like that, like Mr. Grush's experience.
Makes sense. Well, Ryan, we really appreciate you coming on tonight. It was really something to see you testifying on Wednesday. Hopefully you've gotten a little bit of rest, although it seems like you work all the time. Thanks so much for coming on with us tonight.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, perhaps one of the most alarming things to come out of the UFO hearings was that UFOs may not necessarily be friendly. In fact, there's evidence that they have even shown aggression at certain times in history. We're going to discuss that with the panel coming up.
Someone can reach through the veil of government and pierce it to the point of we do not have access to something. You got to start asking yourself who the hell's in control.
Calls to uncover an alleged cover-up on Capitol Hill. Welcome back to our special coverage of the UFO hearings. I want to bring back our panel. Nick Pope worked for the British government investigating UFOs, and Ben Hansen, also former FBI agent, now also investigates sightings. I want to start with you, Nick. I've got a lot of friends and family who have been following our coverage for the last couple months who just say, look, until I can see the evidence for myself, until I can see pictures, they don't believe just, hearing people's stories.
I get that. I mean, I feel the same. But I mean, still, even in these days of forensics and DNA evidence, eyewitness testimony still lies at the heart of the criminal justice system. So we can, we must listen to that. But yeah, Congress is working to try and validate this. I was intrigued in the hearing where David Grush was very specific. And when he was asked, who do we need to get in the room? Who do we need to ask? Whether they're in agencies, corporations. He said, I will give you a list of hostile and friendly witnesses.
That was a good question.
It was a great question. Yeah. And he said he will do it after the hearing. I would love to see that list because that will tell us where to look for these programs.
Yep, and I've asked myself over and over again, why would these guys lie? With their history, top military officials, it just doesn't make sense that they would just suddenly make all this up. I want to play a soundbite from the David Grush interview he did with us initially, something that was kind of alarming when he talks about the potential that these UAPs could actually be aggressive. We'll listen to it and then we'll talk about it.
I've been told that there have been attempts to bring down craft, that we've acted offensively against non-human craft.
There have been instances, and there are certain techniques.
Have human beings been hurt or killed by a non-human intelligence?
While I can't get into the specifics because that would reveal certain U.S. classified operations, I was briefed by a few individuals on the program that there were malevolent events like that.
Ben, that's scary to hear. Yeah, it's scary. You almost don't want it to be true. Is this something we've known? You've been studying this for a long time, long before me. Is this something that we've known about?
Well, the problem is a lot of this is rumored that we can't document. And so if David Grush has that information, it's going to be spectacular. But we can go back as far as what we call the red alert in D.C. in '52, right? 2 weekends over July, these objects would show up and then scatter when they'd scramble jets. I have information I can't verify yet, but that we actually lost a jet that night. Now, even if they're not shooting them down, this is very dangerous. It's no game when you scramble jets, you know, in a sortie to go after something because you're flying extreme speeds. That alone is dangerous. Right now, we're talking about that they might have actually been shot down. Burchett said he saw something that made him feel as if they had the weaponry to turn us into, I think he said, briquettes, or charcoal.
Yeah.
Right? So that automatically should make this a very serious issue. We need to know what the intentions of whoever they are.
What's this nuclear incident, Nick, that we hear people talking about? Was there an incident in a nuclear plant? The Congressman kind of alluded to it.
It's long been claimed that there's a connection between UFOs and nuclear weapons, and there have been a series of incidents where there have been sightings over nuclear power plants, missile silos and such like, and one of them in Malmstrom Air Force Base in 1967. A number of the missiles, when there was a UFO over the facility, apparently went offline. Well, whatever we think caused that, there will be a paper trail. And that's why it's so important. I mean, we heard questions about the Department of Energy. That's why it's important they're looped into this. It's also important that we get this information declassified. And of course, that's one of the things going forward that's going to be in Chuck Schumer's amendment to the new defense bill.
That's what I thought. I just brought this letter out again from George Knapp, which he put into the congressional record. He talks about this advanced weapons system application program. It's this secret program that apparently Harry Reid knew about, and he's saying, like, go back and get all those documents now, like that these Congress people need to go back and get the documents. I'm curious, Ben, you've been at a pilots conference essentially in Wisconsin for the last several days, talking to pilots. We had you on Banfield a couple of nights. What have you learned from me? Are more pilots coming forward with stories?
Absolutely. So I got there Wednesday, so right after the hearings happened in the morning. And we had a booth, and we had a line of people, several people deep. Every 5 minutes, I was getting reports from people, and some of them really extraordinary. I'm talking about stuff that I'm going to be talking to Ryan Graves this week. I'm going to be talking, hopefully, to Burchett. People that might become whistleblowers because some of these happened while they're on Navy ships. Some of these things happened with commercial pilots. Really extraordinary. I just need some time to vet the information because it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a long line. And you mentioned to me there was even like a US Coast Guard member who had something interesting.
There is, and I think when I finally am able to vet that, he's willing to come forward. I can say at this point it involves a USO, underwater submerged object.
Yeah,
unidentified submerged object.
Which that Tic Tac video, if I'm not mistaken, almost looked like. Didn't it kind of look like it went in and out of the water at one point? Am I thinking of the right video?
Well, there are several. There's actually there's one where something does appear to go into the water and then come out. But absolutely, with the Tic Tac incident, there are allegations that this is this so-called transmedium travel, the apparent ability of these objects, whatever they are, to move seamlessly, say, between space and the atmosphere and underwater, and in reverse.
And the thing with the Tic Tac is, you know, again, some of my friends, we don't know where that video came from. Yeah, we do. It actually came from the military. Like, you can't dispute where the video came from. That's obviously one of the most alarming ones. Don't go anywhere. We have more questions for you, more time with you in a minute. We hear so much about this, this only in the hearings, and we hear what happened in the hearings, and we haven't gotten a lot more information on the outside from what's happening next, what's planned next. We're going to talk to our next guest who knows all about this, literally broke the story. There he is, Ross Coulthart, standing by with us. What he's learning from sources since the hearings. Really interesting stuff. That's coming up next. If there's one person who deserves a ton of credit for sparking recent interest in UFOs that led to the hearings, it is our next guest. Investigative journalist Ross Coulthart, who broke the David Grush story right here on News Nation about 2 months ago. Ross joins us live now. It's always good to see you, Ross. First of all, I know you've got sources in Congress. What are your sources saying about the possibility of another UFO hearing?
Yes, well, good evening, Brian. Look, they're concerned. At the moment, we've got great momentum with what's been achieved with the hearing. There's significant media interest, and it's refreshing and quite lovely to see the bipartisan approach being made by different politicians on both sides of the House. But what I'm hearing is that for a public hearing to take place, which is a very different proposition from the private hearings in secure or sensitive compartmented information facilities, SCIFs, that have been taking place for the last 2 years, In order for that kind of public hearing to take place, an inquisitorial hearing where people are subpoenaed, called before a public committee and asked to give evidence under oath, including, hopefully, first-hand witnesses from the legacy program, it really does require the Senate Intelligence Committee, and particularly Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, the senator from New York, to step up and heed growing public opinion on this issue. I'm pretty confident she's certainly motivated to do that, but I'm aware that there's a significant pushback going on at the moment from the Defense Department and sections of the intelligence community who frankly do not want the sterilizing disinfectant of sunlight shone on some of the issues that we're talking about.
Yeah, tell me about this pushback, because it sounds like when you talk to Burchett or others, they say this is just the beginning, we're going to have more hearings. I mean, what are you hearing from your sources about the pushback? How does that work?
Well, Brian, as you'd know, David Grush has raised very serious allegations of possible criminality, certainly illegality, certainly misappropriation, if not fraudulent behaviour with government funds. The allegation is that essentially the wool has been pulled over the eye of Congress, that there have been lies told to oversight committees, that even potentially presidents have been misled. It really doesn't get much more serious than this. And that's why people like AOC, Tim Burchett, even Senator Marco Rubio are talking on both sides of the House about the importance of accountability, of restoring Congress's transparency and control and oversight over these programs, if they are real, to make sure that they fully comply with the congressional requirements. And the difficulty is there are people who are obviously responsible for this, who are presumably at very high positions in both the defence and intelligence community, and who also are very influential inside some of our biggest aerospace contractors. I've just had a conversation this morning with somebody who approached me on behalf of a witness, a potential witness from within the legacy program, somebody who purports to have direct knowledge of the very same program that David Grush is talking about. And they're asking my advice about how to approach. And frankly, one of the issues at the moment is that the Pentagon's UFO UAP investigation office, ARRO, it's sending out a shocking signal. It doesn't have a phone number. It doesn't have an email address. It doesn't even have a website. And its Twitter page hasn't posted a tweet since the very first tweet it posted last year.
It's a really good point.
If this truly is an agency inside the Pentagon that's seriously interested in proactively investigating and hearing from witnesses, it's not sending that message out. And so I'm in the dilemma at the moment. Where do I send these poor people? And I'm encouraging them to consider going forward to either the Inspector General of the intelligence community or the Inspector General of the Defence Force, or to, frankly, just come forward to the Senate Intelligence Committee with the evidence they have. Because I have to say, not a lot of people have a lot of faith in the current body that the Pentagon has entrusted and that Congress has mandated to do these kind of investigations.
Yeah, and we know that that firsthand whistleblowers are coming forward. I mean, David Grush mentioned it in his testimony that there was someone else with firsthand knowledge of a crash retrieval program who did go to the Inspector General with a document with testimony of what they saw. So there is more to come. Ross, incredible reporting. Thank you so much for coming on with us tonight. We'll talk to you soon.
A real pleasure.
Okay, still to come, is there no turning back now when it comes to the quest to look into a possible UFO cover-up? Or is it possible this all fades away? You heard Ross say it. Is it possible there are powerful people who don't want this to move forward and it's going to get shut down? I'll talk to our panel about it with their final thoughts coming up after this. Welcome back to our special coverage of the UFO hearings. I want to bring back in our panel, Nick Pope worked for the British government investigating UFOs, and Ben Hansen is a former FBI agent, now also investigates UFO sightings. I want to ask you both. Nick, I want to start with you. It's interesting what Ross said, that there are people behind the scenes, he has sources, people who are saying, like, no more. We need to shut this down. And you do have to kind of wonder, is there someone behind the scenes saying this isn't the right time for whatever reason? I mean, we've got a war going on, Russia, Ukraine. We've got a bad relationship right now with China. Is there someone saying, like, now is not the time for this?
Well, what we've seen this week with the letter from Dr. Kirkpatrick and the statement from Sue Goff at the DOD, we've seen the Empire Strikes Back. And of course, the government will try to control the narrative, and there's the struggle for narrative control going on right now. But you can't get the toothpaste back into the tube. And ultimately, there's a critical mass that has built up here. There's too much interest, too much at stake. I mean, there are allegations of what may well be criminal offenses, certainly Congress being misled. Congress is not going to let that drop. And we've got more things coming, of course. The NASA report is due next month.
Coming up soon.
Yeah, more hearings, of course, and then the National Defense Authorization Act 2024 is going to have even stronger UFO provisions, including eminent domain, so that the government can take back anything that has found its way into the private sector.
Interesting. Ben, what do you think? I mean, is it possible there's someone behind the scenes saying, let's just drip a little bit out, see if people can process it, give it some time?
Well, let's flip your question around a little bit,
Okay.
right? And you're saying, is it a good time? Is it the perfect time? I mean, we have so much going on in the country. If they slip something in there, what we call, the big D disclosure comes out, a lot of people, might kind of miss what we really said, right? And that we're not alone. And so you've got all these other distractions. But I do think, and based on some research I've done, that the best strategy is a slow drip method. So as much as I hate it, as much as I want it out right now, I think the rational thing to do is to slowly release this. So like Nick said, you can't put it back. It's already in the history books, but it might take long.
But even that makes me uncomfortable. It makes me think of COVID, like when they hid stuff from us, and they didn't want to tell us everything. It's like, we're humans. We, don't hide stuff from
COVID is a
American
perfect
people.
example. And the problem is there was horrible risk messaging in COVID. We were told completely opposite things on something we knew a lot about, the pandemic. We've been planning for pandemics. But look at this, we know so little about something such as this, and who are the experts. If this comes out, there's going to be mass confusion, potential, and I think they need to stay ahead of the game.
Or is it possible that social media, we move from one story to the next? We only have about 30 seconds left, but is it possible that people just process it and move on?
I think so, but I think Ben's point about COVID is a good one. Societal panic, we saw it. And when you panic, you don't make good decisions, whether it's government, health authorities, the media, or the public.
Nick Pope, Ben Hansen, you both have helped us process all of this for the last couple months. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thanks, Brian.
Really appreciate it. It's crazy to think that it was 55 days ago that we aired the story with UFO whistleblower David Grush here on News Nation. We vetted it. We vetted him. We knew he was legit. We also knew that we were going into uncharted territory. I don't think any of us expected that just 55 days later, we would be covering congressional hearings. But here we are. At what feels like a moment, we could be up on the cusp of learning a lot more. And News Nation, hopefully you've figured it out. We have no agenda. We're not a network of UFO believers or of UFO skeptics. We are journalists committed to following the truth wherever it takes us. We're a new network born out of a need to be different and cover stories that no one else is covering. And you can count on us to keep pushing and demanding the truth for the American people and for the world. Thanks so much for watching. Good night.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.
Hi, I'm Tika Tiwari. This self-driving Tesla is taking me to a little-known facility.
choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
There's several, actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs that are out there of extraterrestrial origin.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. With the surface appearing to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. I'm at the foot of the ladder. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap